Hi, I'm Heather Hubbard. I went from being a lawyer and partner at one of the largest firms in America to becoming an online personality and successful entrepreneur. I know what it takes to rise to the top. I also know all too well the toll it can take on your health and personal life. So, how do you shine bright without burning out? How do you chase joy while achieving success? You're listening to the Hustle and Flow podcast. Welcome back to Hustle and Flow. I am your host, and we are on episode 209. And today we have special guest Deborrah Ashley. But before we get to that, I wanted to share that I am sending out a special piece of snail mail. So if you want to receive this special snail mail, all you have to do is go to heatherjoyhubbard.com/snail mail and enter your name and your address. And when I ship these out, I believe it will be the first week of October, you will be included in that. So go ahead and fill that form out. And I would love to send you what I have been designing and working on. Okay, so today we have a super special guest. As I mentioned, Deborrah Ashley. She is the author of LinkedIn Insider, How to Leverage LinkedIn to Stand Out as the Industry Leader. She has helped over 300 coaches, consultants, and professional service providers turn their LinkedIn presence into a six-figure revenue channel, which we all want, right? She is trusted by executives from Expedia, LinkedIn, the U.S. Department of Commerce, and Siemens Healthineers. Her insight has been shared in Oprah Magazine, the New York Times, and Black Enterprise Magazine, as well as on stage and in chamber events. Deborrah is known as the LinkedIn Black Belt for her expertise in helping professionals use the platform to attract high-value clients and opportunities. She was also in attendance at summer camp in 2020. So if you were too, you might have met Deborah then. But we are so excited to have her on the podcast today. Welcome, Deborrah Ashley, to Hustle and Flow.
Thank you, Heather. So excited to be here and to share with your audience.
Yes. Okay. LinkedIn Black Belt. I have so many questions. Who do you think is really missing out the most on not being on and leveraging LinkedIn?
One thing, and I posted this a long time ago, but if you are a subject matter expert in any space, I talk to lawyers a lot, and they hate to call themselves an expert unless it's just something that they're not allowed to call themselves an expert. But if you have specific knowledge, and a lot of my people have decades of knowledge in a particular area, you're missing out if you're not sharing that on LinkedIn. I always think about, because we have this knowledge in our head that we sometimes we don't think people even care about, but there are certain things that we know that's common sense to us that others are just wowed by. So yeah, anyone who we would consider a subject matter expert, they're the ones who should definitely be on LinkedIn.
And I feel like LinkedIn has really, really grown over the years. And some people got on it at the very beginning, right? And they were just like, this is too stuffy. And I feel like it's actually changed a lot as the years have gone on.
For sure. Yeah, since the pandemic, and I'm not sure if you recognize that shift too. Obviously, people didn't have a way to do business like they typically would face to face. So a lot of the shift happened that I noticed during the pandemic. So when we think about that, obviously we have different generations. When we think about the generation that LinkedIn was traditionally created for, we think about, executive leadership teams. There's always transitions going around in companies. And with the uptick of people building businesses online, and you have the content creators and you have your influencers, what I recognized was that LinkedIn was trying to attract that crowd. So they were trying to attract the TikTok crowd. They were trying to attract the YouTube and the Reels crowd. And I can tell you from my standpoint of what I watched, and there's another shift happening, I think it got a little bit over the top when you have the LinkedIn crowd, the TikTok crowd with the clickbait. And I helped a man on the corner of the road. Here's a picture of the man that I helped on the corner of the road and me doing a thumbs up. LinkedIn started to realize it was turning off their original crowd of executives and CEOs, people that they could use for demographics for advertisers to say, come on, because we have 80% of CEOs who run Fortune 500 companies, they come to LinkedIn once a month or once a week. So what I realize now, LinkedIn is kind of um, eliminating the reach for those type of clickbait posts, and now they're coming back to thought leadership. So yeah, we saw that shift, but it's definitely a lot more relaxed. It's definitely a lot more day in the life. I have this whole framework around how to start to think about putting out content, because before it was all about, here's an education post, and this is what you should do. Now it's about, here's how my life unfolds as an executive or an attorney or a founder of an organization, and here's what you can learn from that. So that's, those are the big shifts that we've been seeing over the years.
So I always my personal opinion is that you really need to find out where your clients are and where your personality is and lean into one um, social platform more than others, because they really are a little bit different. And I will be the first to say, Instagram is my primary social media. I will connect it to Facebook and I will occasionally post on LinkedIn, but my best results are from Instagram because that's where I focus. But if your primary, social media is going to be LinkedIn and there's so much opportunity there, do you think it's important that you're not just repurposing content that you're doing over on Facebook and Instagram, but that it's truly for LinkedIn?
Yes, there's definitely a different voice for your different client base. Sometimes it's just a simple tweak that you have to do when you move something from, say, Instagram or Facebook to LinkedIn. I would say we're definitely not going about copy and paste the exact, that's I see a lot of people doing that. Copy and paste the exact post that I have on Facebook or Instagram and plop it down on LinkedIn. It kind of looks lazy. We have to start to understand the mind of that buyer or the customer base or the audience on LinkedIn. And we can make little tweaks, because I mean, here's the thing, if you're an expert in a specific space, what you're typically sharing on places like Instagram or Facebook, it is relevant for LinkedIn. It just has to be tweaked a bit. What I would say that does not necessarily have to be tweaked, if you have a YouTube channel, you can pretty much do your mini, you clip mini posts from your YouTube channel, you add it to LinkedIn, and in the comments, you can tell them, if you want to watch, say, the full episode, go to my YouTube. So that would be the only platform that I would say you don't necessarily have to change. But all the other platforms, for sure, definitely change.
And I feel like there are so many different layers of LinkedIn and so many different, because you've got your groups, you have the sales navigator, you have the newsletters, you have the posts, there's the thought. So I'm just curious, if someone like really wanted to lean in to LinkedIn, how strategic and I guess stacked does their plan need to be?
So it depends on your goals. For some people, it's lead generation, making sales, clients. That's one goal. And I can go over what typically that would look like. For others, it's really just building thought leadership. Maybe they want to get on boards. Maybe they want to be speakers at conferences. Maybe they want to be recognized within certain associations. And then for others too, now we're doing attracting top talent, right? So when we think about obviously attracting top talent, if that's the real goal, I believe content's going to be super important, because nowadays we're not just taking a position or taking a job because of the money. We want to know who we're working with, because we've learned our lessons, over the years.
Yeah.
So that's going to be one piece. Obviously, the premium sales navigator, where your advertising roles, that's good, but I think content's an important piece of that. I'll go straight into, if your goal it's sales, then of course you can, let's do a stack. Obviously, sales navigator will be important when you're making connections with people. I talk about 3 C's within your network: potential clients. And if we understand our client base, we have an idea of who those people would be, right? It's a founding organization making between 20 to 50 million with under 100 employees. You can actually go into Sales Navigator and plug that specific thing in. And then you can plug in by either founder or CEO, and you can reach that person. So if that's your goal, definitely Sales Navigator. Putting out content is going to be super important so they can get an idea of what working with you is like. And the thing about that I love about LinkedIn, especially now with AI, right? We can, as experts, we're able to really stand out above the noise when we bring video in. Because anyone can put out amazing content, and I wouldn't say anyone, there's some factors within that, but if you know the factors and you have the copywriting skills, anyone can use AI and put out content. But when you're on video, and not a lot of people are using video, that's why I love this part. When you're in video, it's going to separate you above the noise because you're not using AI, you're using your personality, you're using your insight, you're sharing stories. So one thing that I would say if you're looking to generate leads and get clients, Sales Navigator, video/content, and then building your network. So those are the things you think about.
So I know a lot of people who, and I have clients that they love LinkedIn for the thought leadership and just for putting content out there, but they never know how to bridge the gap from going to they just hope that someone will reach out to them, and sometimes that happens. But I'm
Yeah.
curious, because you truly are the LinkedIn black belt, do you have recommendations on how you go about crossing that bridge from just marketing to sales? Because we've all been on the slimy end, the receiving end of, the slimy messages. So I'm curious as to what your suggestions and your approach is.
So when I think about your content strategy and your lead generation strategy on LinkedIn, which kind of marries each other, it's like everyday networking in life. You wouldn't necessarily reach out to someone just when you need something. I know we do sometimes, but you don't want to be that person. You want to be able to give value, pour in, not expecting anything on the back end, but maybe later on down the line, there is a board role, or there is someone that you'd love to be able to connect with, and you know that person has a connection, you can reach out then. One thing I would do when we think about strategy, value is going to be highly important. And that's really, value is not necessarily what we think it is. It's what our audience or client base gets from it. So putting out the content that offers value, and you can know how valuable it is by how many people share it, how many people like and comment. Putting out that content. Where I start to now sell, I do carousel posts. On the final post, that's where I'm going to sell my thing. I just shared 3 ways that you can use LinkedIn content to make yourself more attractive for board roles. If you're interested in overhauling your LinkedIn profile to make that happen, reach out to me. I do this all the time for clients. So that would be something you would put on a carousel post on the last piece of the post after you've added value. Another way that you can, quote unquote, ask for the sale is you do a video, and it could just even be a 7 to 10-minute video. Once a week on Wednesdays, you come live, you do a video, and then at the very end, if you'd like to know more about what we just discussed over the last 15 minutes, reach out to me on DM or drop the word paper, and then I'll reach out to you on DM. That works very well for me. Whenever I say drop the word or drop whatever, and I reach out to people, then I start to have conversations in the DM. So the sale's not necessarily happening on your content. Somewhat like Instagram and Facebook, the sale is happening on your content. The sale is really happening on the back end. And the goal of your content is to get people back to your profile. So another data point to check, you have this on LinkedIn, you can see how many people on a weekly basis, how many people actually viewed your profile. If you're not getting a lot of people viewing your profile, and I always do this with clients, I can either tell they're not putting out enough content or they're not putting out relevant content. So those are like easy ways that you can really sell into your customer base, is just by offering value first.
Do you ever recommend, so because there's lots of gurus out there who I'm like, I don't know that I agree with that, but I 100% know that I'm going to do whatever you say. So I'm curious, what do you think of, one, the approach where every time you connect, you're then like trying to start a conversation with the person in the DMs to get to know them? And then 2, what do you think of the concept of encouraging, like, of people reaching out and saying, oh, book an appointment or book a call as soon as they make that connection?
Okay, so two things. I always put myself in someone's shoes of how they would feel about certain things. So I have two responses to that. Also, I'm an introvert, so there's just certain things I just don't do, right?
Yeah.
Um, I have no problem with sending outreach messages in the DM for a very specific, highly targeted thing where I know there's a solution that I offer that they need. But that comes with me having a fully strategic brand that I already created on LinkedIn. So when people go to look me up after I've sent them a DM, they're just like, oh, this is natural. Of course I need to work with her. Or I've put out a bunch of content that I know relates to solving their problem. And then I'll do something as simple. And I've done this using Sales Navigator, no prior contact. Let's say it's a director of learning and development for an organization. And I will say something like, hi, Heather, I just did a workshop for the Economic Development Organization in St. Pete, and they suggested that other organizations may benefit from this too. Is it worth a conversation? And people, if it's worth I mean, are they going to say no? Right? So it's really being able to understand specifically what they need. I wouldn't make that your go-to for everything, but it comes with, like I mentioned, it comes with having that brand where if they take a look at who you are, it just makes sense that yes, that's what you do.
Yeah.
Everything else is spam. Yeah, everything else is spam.
Well, and I mean, I don't know about you, but I get, because as soon as someone connects, they can then see your contact information, and the amount of spam that I get in my email, right, from people who I would connect with on LinkedIn, it's made me actually be very cautious, regardless of how many mutual connections we have, for me to actually connect with someone. So I'm curious if you have thoughts on that when people are getting access to someone's email, whether they're utilizing that as a form of communication as well.
I know, here's the funny thing. I know there's a certain point, and this is probably, if we're thinking about 6 years ago, LinkedIn was making your contact information and emails accessible, like you said, to the people you connected with. There was a lawsuit. Of course, I got my $7.59, the class action lawsuits.
I
Now what?
didn't get anything. Where's my $7?
Right. What's happening now, it's not as easy. You can still scrape emails. It's not as easy. I just put my Gmail account
Mm.
that I rarely check. Yeah, there's nothing we can do about it because the more that we try to make it not happen, there's so many people who use, and it's not necessarily illegal, but just like scamish things like the tools that can like strip your entire account. There's so
Yeah.
many people who use those and they're going to find it anyway. So yeah, I stopped using my main email address. But
So
LinkedIn, that is against the terms of service for LinkedIn, though, that you cannot scrape people's information, but people still do it.
do you ever, because obviously the people listening are not going to scrape information, but would you ever recommend that someone use that contact information to go off of LinkedIn? Or if they're wanting to have a conversation with someone, do you recommend that they always use the LinkedIn Messenger if that's how they first connected?
Yeah, so it depends. If you have your LinkedIn page that positions you as this go-to trusted industry leader, I love DMs. If not, it's going to be very specific. And there are a bunch of different tools that can find the emails. A lot of people have had luck with email marketing, but it's one of those things where you have to be very specific, like I mentioned before, on the solution that you offer and what they need, and you want to make sure it's the right person. But now you're playing with the numbers, right? So now you're
Mhm.
playing with, as an example, sending out 1,000 leads and 1,000 emails, and maybe you're getting back 6 replies. I mean, that's still a good thing, but here's where it happens where email, of course, there's now these big rules against email and spam to kind of curb that. You can't necessarily send more than 100 a day per email address because your email account will lock you out for doing that. But yeah, email marketing works. I'm just not a pro at that. And I find because I have positioned myself a certain way and I've built my page to a certain way, it works a lot quicker. And here's the thing, they can just go straight to they can go and look me up and find me versus Most, when we think about the executive level or anyone else, they probably get about 50 to 100 spam emails per day.
Yeah.
I've heard some leaders say that just getting up in the morning, they already have 30 spam emails in their, in their inbox. So you're fighting against that, right? If you do choose to use email, a great form of that would be having someone else connect you. So if you have someone who already knows the person, then you do a informal introduction like that. But they're making it a lot harder for email marketing to be successful when we do cold email that way.
Mm-hmm. So I know people hire you for because they have different goals, right? You mentioned that earlier. So people are going to hire you with different goals. But is there like one or two things that often stand out for you, like that a lot of people do wrong? Like as soon as you come in, you're like, this needs to be tweaked.
Definitely the content. What I realized, especially with someone, the more of a background in corporate, the more that I can tell that their content doesn't really connect with people. So the content piece where it's just more education, education, on board, 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 that comes through very strongly. Not being clear on their messaging and positioning, and that goes along with the content. But yeah, the content piece is where I see a lot of people, when we do a few tweaks, their views take off and their inquiries take off too.
What so that from an algorithm perspective, do you have to get going for a little bit for it to actually start working, or is it just mostly content related? So let's say you've not posted in a year. If you put out good, relevant content, should it go ahead and have, like the good likes and shares and comments, or will it take a little while for it to actually, you know, gear
Yeah,
up?
everything will take a little while. There's a few factors in here. When we think about how the algorithms work, since there's multiple, they're going to pull a small audience from your first degree connections. And we have first degree, second degree, and third degree connections. First degrees are like your friends on Instagram. Second degrees are people who are connected to your friends, but they're not your connections. But so they'll be able to see your thing. So here's how we can work this. If you haven't posted for like a month, no, it's not going to naturally share your content with others, because the only goal of LinkedIn, maybe they have other goals, but clearly their goal is to make money, and they make money from their advertisers. And if you're not consistent on the platform, and if people are not playing on the playground with you, they have no reason to share your content, because that doesn't help people to stay on the platform. So they first share your content with maybe a small percentage of your first degree connections. If those people don't engage, then it doesn't go anywhere. If those people do engage, now they know there's something here, so then they send it to the second degree and then the third degree. But it's going to take a little bit. What I typically suggest, and it depends on if you have a team or if you have a company, I would suggest just maybe having a friend who may be more active to comment and like on your post. And then that kind of gets the party going, but it requires consistency. So as an example, if you post and then you don't post again for another 2 weeks, now you kind of started over from scratch. But once you've built that momentum where people are excited about your content, and another way, and I wouldn't, there's so many different things that people do to try to get people to their content. They may tag someone that they see with bigger followers. If that person untags themselves and they press ignore because they get a notification, now you've damaged yourself on the platform, because a lot of people are doing that. So your best bet to get the momentum going and keep the momentum is to get a small community of people. And that's what I don't do that anymore, but I know a lot of people that they do things like that. It doesn't take a lot of people, just get maybe 3 or 4 people and start to have those conversations. But it has to be consistent, or you just start over from scratch.
I actually remember I had forgotten that you were a coach for the 2020 mastermind experience, but several of the people booked calls with you, and I remember that was one of your pieces of advice, and they gathered together, and they were all, so the people in the mastermind community were really supporting each other's content and commenting. And yes, that is such a great piece of advice. And a lot of us are in mastermind communities, or at least we have colleagues and peers, or so many organizations where we're all wanting to improve and get ahead. And so put together, who doesn't want to support each other, right? Especially women helping women. So just go ask because you can do it for them as well. It's not just scratch my back. It's like, let's all support each other. I love
For
that.
sure. And I would also even say getting in the right, when you build that collaboration, make sure you're getting in with the right people, because you always have other people who will engage and be active consistently, and then you have certain people who are just not doing anything. So you really have to be strict with the rules, have boundaries around how that works. And you
Yeah.
want to also make, when we think about engaging on content, it's not just cool post or that's great or thanks for sharing. It actually requires a specific amount of engagement, because once again, the algorithm is smart, and if you're just like cool post and that's great, they don't count that.
Yeah.
It has to have at least some type of conversation. The more conversation that's happening within your comment section, and then when other people are commenting and sharing it and tagging others, that's when it's really going to get moving. So one little fun trick when I'm not on the platform, like for me, I have a week is a big deal for me, but I haven't posted in like a week. I always have, and I'll share there's like 4 different types of content that's really going to help the algorithm going, but of course, position you as an industry leader, right? You have, and I always talk about the head, like what's on your mind? What's on the mind of your ideal clients too? For a lot of my people, they have imposter syndrome. So I kind of
Mm.
maybe do a post about, I remember when I first started on social media after I left corporate America, I didn't realize that I had so much insight that people were interested in. What I realized later on is I had imposter syndrome. And so this is a post, right? So that's your
Mhm.
head. What are they going through? It's like, Sunday night and Monday morning is here. What are they going through right now on a Monday morning? Then we think about, so that's your head, right? And then we think about what's some helpful stuff. All right. So when we think about the helpful content, what's something that will help your people get to the next stage, or that will help them to solve a problem? Obviously, you're not solving the complete problem, but you're helping them to get to the next step in the game. Then we have your humorous content. So this is what I would use. If I haven't been on the platform for a week, I would use something that's going to grab attention. It doesn't have to be humorous, like, here's a joke funny, but it just has to be something that people relate to, right?
Yeah.
And when we think about, I don't have it with me here, but I have like a Rubik's Cube and I have one of those slinkies. So it kind of like brings us back to our childhood. So it's just something that's going to allow people to relate to you a lot more. All right, so then we have our last one. It's like really what's happening in the industry, what's happening behind the scenes. And I typically tell my leadership teams, if you think about the end of your week, at the end of your week on Fridays, you can share a week, what happened for your week. What were some of the successes you have? What were some of the failures you have? Because people want to know as much about your failures, not in a negative way, but so they can learn from it, as well as they want to know your successes. So I think about the 4 type of content that you would think about, but the humor one, it could be a video, it could be anything, but anything that's going to grab people's attention, it's going to get the algorithm back in form if you haven't used it for a long time.
I could ask so many questions about this. So I'm going to go back though, because you had mentioned lead generation. And I'm curious, do you have one cool trick or tip or anything that you want to share related to lead generation specifically?
One cool trick that I see a lot of people overlook, if you don't have Sales Navigator, this works very well in Sales Navigator, especially when we're connecting with the 3 C's, right? Your clients, your potential collaborators, and champions. One cool trick, when you're in Sales Navigator, there's a tab that you can tick. They've posted in the last 30 days on LinkedIn. LinkedIn has over 1 billion members at this point, but maybe 40% of the people are active on the platform or even logged in the past month. So when we're reaching out to connect with people, even to build our network, and this is going to be a very important piece of the puzzle when we talk about lead generation, because if you share content out there and half of your network, they're not even active on the platform, no one's really going to see it. So
Hmm.
there is an actual tab on Sales Navigator where you could say that they posted content in the past 30 days. That way, when you start to build your network, you can know these are actually people who are going to say yes to your connection request because they're actually on the platform. So that's one cool trick when we think about lead generation. Another cool trick that I've actually told clients about, once you have a call, a discovery call, a conversation with someone, and you're very clear about their needs, definitely connect with them. And as a matter of fact, connect with as many people prior discovery call people that you've had on LinkedIn. And now you're going to start to use your content to solve problems that you knew that they had. So now
Oh,
it's just, they're going to remember, they're like, oh, wow, she's talking about how do I start to use content to generate leads? That was a big issue I had because I was always just sharing regular content and I realized no one really cares. So now you're going to start using your content and your platform to solve their problems. And then if nothing else, you can reach out to them. Hey, Heather, I saw this. I recently shared this case study on how the Slinky is the new digital marketing product. Here is a link.
I love that.
But behind the scenes, you're solving their problem.
Right. That is so smart. That is so smart. Okay. For those listening who are like, I definitely need to be working with Deborrah. What does that look like if someone works with you? And two, how can they get in contact with you in order to work with you?
Absolutely. So I work a lot with clients who are looking to position themselves as a go-to industry leader, but obviously use that to generate sales and generate speaking engagements. So they can reach out to me, obviously, directly on LinkedIn, and they can say that they heard about me from your show, and we can have the conversation there. I also have a product that it's called the Authority Kit, and they can go to theauthoritykit.com, and I have 50 prompts that persuade, that position you as an expert and help you to profit. And all you have to do, you don't have to worry about any of your content and think about, for a lot of the people I know, they have tons of content in their head. I actually give you specific prompts. Like yesterday, I listened to this podcast about leadership, and the reason why it helped me was because, and now that's your post. So we have all these different prompts that you can use to start to position yourself that deals with humor, the heart, the head, and things that are happening. So that's a great way to reach out to me. And if not, if you just have questions, just send me a message on LinkedIn. I also have one more way. If you go into LinkedIn and you cannot find me by my name, just do hashtag the LinkedIn Black Belt. You can see all of my content that I've ever put out. And then you can also find me that way.
The template idea is brilliant. That is an easy way to, right? Like immediately just improve your content. For those who are digging deeper, do you have packages, or is it just always like a one-off 1 hour coaching? What does that look like?
So I have packages. I have 90-day packages. I have 6-month packages. It depends. I like to work with people where they currently are. So we take a look at where they are and what they typically need. Most people are okay with the 90-day. But others who are kind of starting from scratch, because now it's time to build your network, you need to learn Sales Navigator. I want to help you to put together your LinkedIn Live event, which generates a lot of leads from that. That's when we work together for 90 days to 6 months.
I love it. All right. I know people are listening who need this. So as you are doing your plans and you're thinking about what your marketing and sales strategy is going to be in 2025, if LinkedIn is one of your primary tools, definitely go hire Deborrah Ashley. And even if it's not your primary, but it just needs to be kind of brushed up, go get that Authority Kit for sure. We will put all of these links in the show notes. So you've got everything you need. Deborrah, thank you so much for coming on. I have been wanting to have you on for really since summer camp, and then the podcast went away for a while. So I am so glad we were finally able to make this happen. I know you're going to help so many people today who are listening. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Heather. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining me for this week's podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, give the episode a like and leave a comment below so we can keep the conversation going. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a future episode or announcement. Listening on Apple, Spotify, or another podcast app, you can watch the video and join in the after show conversation by visiting hustleandflowpodcast.com.